Hey there guys, it's time for, oh you guessed it because there's a table of Glocks in front of you, another Glock run through. We're running out of Glocks to run through, but I think this might actually be the last video of Glock run throughs. Okay, you guys won't have to put up with this anymore. Anyway, here's another Glock run through. I've clumped together, I have clumped together what I call the one-off Glocks. These are the Glocks that it would kind of be sad to make a video just on it. I'm going to run through these and you'll kind of understand why I put them all together as opposed to making an individual video about each one. The first one is the Glock 45 gap. So we have a 37, 38, 39. 45 gap is kind of a funny looking cartridge. It's a 45 ACP that's just a hair shorter with the same bullet in it. And the whole idea behind that, Glock wanted to take their standard frame, so the same frame size as the Glock 17, and still get a 45 caliber cartridge in it. Now, this failed miserably. Let's just be clear. One of the biggest issues, you get 13 rounds in a standard Glock 21. In this, you only get 10 rounds of 45 gap because that grip is just a little bit thinner, so the double stack is more of a stack and a half rather than a double stack. It really doesn't do much. So this was a failed product. This one is actually a Glock 37. The others that I have here, this is not actually a Glock 38 and a Glock 39. These are just stand-ins, but the Glock 38 would be a compact 45 gap with a 4-inch barrel. Should have said this has the 4.5-inch barrel. This would be the subcompact, which would have the 3.5-inch barrel, all in 45 gap. These guys are just stand-ins though. So I only have one 45 gap, and hence the reason that we're grouping this guy with some of these others. The next one off is this Glock Model 42. Glock Model 42 is a 380 ACP. Now Glock does make a Glock 25 and a 28, which is a compact and a subcompact in 380 ACP, but they are not available in the United States for import restriction reasons, etc. And the reality is, if you can get the full power 9, why on earth would you sacrifice to get the same firearm in a weaker cartridge? So they don't make those here in the US. They don't import them. So you can't get the 25 and the 28 in 380, but you can get this little Glock 42. He's really nice and tiny. So we'll shoot him. Again, people don't really like this guy. He has some reliability issues. He's not the smallest 380 out there, like the Ruger LCP, for example, or some of the Kel-Tecs, but it's an interesting one. So we've grouped him in with these one-offs because we don't have these other ones in the US. This one here looks pretty normal, except for, what's that weird line? Oh, this is a Glock 44 in 22 long rifle. This is a newer, but I guess by the time this video comes out, not very new. Look at how thin that barrel is. This is their 22 long rifle, Glock 44. It's the same size as your Glock 19 or your Glock 23, but it is chambered in 22, has a polymer slide on it, which is an interesting choice. We'll put some rounds through that, but again, there's not a whole line of 22 caliber Glocks, so this guy gets grouped with this. So we've got a 22, a 380, and a 45 gap, and we're going to shoot them in number order. So the 37, then the 42, then the 44, and I'll stop talking. Let's get shooting. All right, so up first is this Glock 37 in 45 ACP. Now, I just shot a Glock 21 a little bit ago. Probably saw that video a while ago. Right off the bat, I know that the front to back distance of this grip, just picking it up, that's different. Not only because that's a 4th gen and this is a 3rd gen, but that was part of the design, was to make a 45 caliber firearm in the smaller grip size. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Different shooters have different hand sizes. But let's go ahead and shoot some 45 gap and see how it goes. Goes terribly. There it is. Oof. That's it. Didn't lock back on the last round, and I definitely flinched. Put a few more down range. There it is. All right, didn't lock back. I'll comment on that. That's not a problem with the 45 gap or the Glock 37. I've found that at this elevation, a lot of my firearms have a hard time actually cycling and locking to the rear. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but every time I'm shooting here, you guys have seen it in other videos, I have Glocks that do failure to lock back on the last shot. I have Springfields that do that. Don't know if it's the air pressure at 7,200 feet above sea level or what the deal is, but don't think of that as a problem here. And if we see that in the other ones, again, that's probably an elevation issue, not necessarily a fault of the firearm. I did want to point out that the Glock 37, because it has a thicker slide, it fits in a larger frame holster where it does not fit in the Glock 19 or Glock 17 holsters, because it has that thicker slide. So even though the grip is the same size, the handle is the same size as a 17, it's comfortable if you're used to having a 17, it's not going to fit in the same holsters. Okay. All right, so that's your Glock 37. Let's get that guy out of there. And again, the 38 and 39 that are here aren't really 38s, 39s, so we're going to leave those alone. Let's move on to this tiny little Glock 42. Now, I like it better than other 380s that I have shot, to be fair. The Ruger LCP, for example, my brother has an LCP, and I hate that thing. It is the worst. It's so small, I just can't get a good grip on it and actually do anything with it. So this one, just being that little bit larger, I like. It is fairly tuckable, so if you want to conceal it, I mean, it conceals fairly nicely. It's really thin, but do you really want a 380 ACP? I don't know. It wouldn't be my first choice. All right, anyway, let's get some targets up. Let's do some shooting, and let's see how 380 ACP works. Now, I think these are 90 grain. Yeah, these are either these are 90s, these are 100s. So slightly different rounds. Let's see how it does with some 380s at 13 yards. Coming from a 45 gap to a 380, it's funny. It's a very light recoil. Even on a small firearm like this, 380 doesn't have a lot of punch. There we go. Yeah, and lock it back. Again, I think that's the elevation, not a fault of the firearm specifically. Let's try some of these 100 grainers. I think those are 100 grains. They might actually be 90s as well. The trigger on this guy is really heavy. It's a 5.5 or a 6 pound trigger. I mean, it is, you're working to get it to go off, which is something that's desirable if you're in a self-defense situation. You don't want to get the gun to go off by itself, but it's a little annoying when you're trying to be precise. There it is. Oh, missed that last one. So, okay. So, not bad. There are a lot of people that really don't like the Glock 42. There have been failures out there. Mine has been reliable. Some of the hand loads that I've run through it have not run well, but all the factory 380 that I've put through it has run fairly decently. So it's not bad. Why? That would be the question. If you want something for carry, my resounding recommendation is still a Glock 48 and 9mm. You can get aftermarket magazines with 15 rounds as opposed to 6 rounds of 380. I would so much rather have 15 rounds of 9mm for any circumstance than 6 rounds of 380. So that's my take on it. Glock 42, not too bad. Let's move over to the Glock 44. Glock 44 is pretty neat because it is the same shape and size as a Glock 19. And so whatever gear you have for your Glock 19, it's going to fit in very nicely. All right? Now it is 22 instead of 9, and as such, all of the inherent flaws of a semi-automatic in 22 apply to this firearm as well. There are very few 22 semi-automatics that run flawlessly. If you watch my 22 comparison video, I shot 18 different types of 22 in a variety of different 22 semi-automatic handguns and a revolver. All of them had issues at some point or another. That's not a flaw of the firearm itself, it's the fact that it's shooting a freaking little 22, okay? All right, let's see what we can hit with a 22 long rifle. We'll do some holster work because this one's nice and easy. hanging up on that round. Okay. If you have magazine carriers for a standard Glock will work with these guys here. Yeah, it's hitting high again. Even the 22 is hitting high. But again, I like this guy a lot. Okay, so the 42, not a fan. Don't get one of those. A 22 caliber Glock now. Is it my favorite 22 semi-automatic? No. An SR22 or a Ruger Mark IV, that would be my go-to if you said I want a good 22 semi-automatic. But if you said, you know what, I want a Glock in 22, do they make that? I would say absolutely, and you should go get one. These are really, really nice. Now, again, if you've been online, you've seen that there are problems. There's been a few that have actually blown apart, a few that have had cycling issues, feeding issues. They're not as robust. They do have a polymer slide rather than a metal slide. There's all sorts of issues with them. But if you want a 22 caliber Glock, which I had an Advantage Arms conversion kit, so that I could have a 22 caliber Glock and I could train with this, with just cheap 22. I've wanted this and it came out and I've got one and I'm happy with it. Okay, despite all the negative reviews and the I don't really like it, it works well. Now the ammo that I was just shooting is Remington Viper. It's Remington Viper. So it's a 1400 foot per second, 36 grain 22, a little bit higher power than your standard bulk 22. It runs really well in this type of a firearm. But yeah, if you just want a 22 caliber semi-automatic, go get yourself a Ruger SR22 or a Ruger Mark IV. Those will do you very well. This is not a bad option though. Hey, that was quick. We ran through it again. 45 gap, 380, and 22 long rifle. Right now, for 380 and the 22, there's really only one option from Glock for those. The 45 gap, whether you ever want to consider getting one or not is up to you. I picked one up because at the beginning of the ammo crisis, I said I should really get a 45 gap just in case. 45 gap typically runs 46, 47 cents a round, which in normal times, that's like 10 cents more than a 45 ACP. It's more than double a 9mm. But with ammo prices today at 80 cents a round, 90 cents a round, 46 cents for some extra 45 gap that somebody has laying around, hey, that's a cheap gun to shoot all of a sudden. So I picked up a couple hundred rounds of 45 gap because it was less expensive than 9, if you can imagine. I don't expect to do a lot of shooting with that, but it is kind of a nice backup. I'm going to make a video comparing 45 gap and 45 ACP, so stay tuned for that, and hopefully it will come out soon. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Hope you get to go out to the range sometime and have some fun yourself. See you next time.